Ladies and gentlemen, this is the morning of Game 5 of the NBA Finals. My Boston Celtics have a shot at history on our home court, man. But Jimmy High Roller uploaded this video called "It Wasn't Supposed to End Like This." I think he did upload this the morning of Game 4. Jimmy, if you jinxed us, man, I swear, man. But here we go. Oh, these finals takes, NBA finals takes? Say less, say less, say less. I've seen a lot of bad takes these NBA finals, man. Oh, God.
Can you say something nice about the Celtics?
Absolutely not.
Is Jaylen Brown become as good as prime Kobe Bryant this postseason?
Hey, so, the Celtics so.
Just go home, get the ammo ready, get the bazooka, get the 50 cal ready.
It's the NBA Finals, and you know what that means. A new champion will be crowned. Legacies will be cemented. The torch passed from one team to another, and some of the most scorching hot takes you've ever laid eyes on. Today, we're gonna take a look at some of these takes. NBA Finals edition. The good, the bad, and the downright horrific.
Look at my boy Paul Pierce, man. It's cool, bro. It's cool. I got my chain too, man. Hold on, man. I got my chain today, man. Come on, bro. I'm standing 10 toes with the team, man. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Arguably the best offensive backcourt in the history of the NBA, and Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving.
Did you say history?
Yeah, I had that take too, man. I think I may have jumped the gun just a little bit too much with the greatest offensive backcourt ever. But I still don't think it's a bad take. It's just these finals, like, Kyrie hasn't been Kyrie. And Luka hasn't been perfect. But in terms of the skill set of both guys, like, it's more so how much you care about the results, which is a valid point, but nevertheless.
The 2024 NBA Finals have been a bit one-sided. And with my rotten team on vacation for the last 2 months, I unfortunately have no dog in this race. Instead, I cope by watching other fans viciously duke it out while their team fights for NBA supremacy. And almost as entertaining as the finals itself are some of the takes and opinions that emerge from said duking. And here are some of the more interesting ones I came across. Now, our first take comes from a fan that says that if the Celtics win the finals, Luka Doncic should still be considered for the finals MVP.
He should still be considered, but he shouldn't win. I'm sorry, bro. He shouldn't. I've said this numerous times over the last couple of weeks. Luka just hasn't played phenomenal enough for him to get a loser's finals MVP. And the Celtics and their individual players also haven't played ass enough to not get it. So.
Now, my friend, I know you're in a tough position. Losing in the finals is not an easy thing to go through. I mean, being a Blazers fan, I personally wouldn't know the feeling, but I assume it's gotta be painful. But I do know where you're coming from, because LeBron's my favorite player, and I had to watch this. The 2015 Finals. If anyone tells you basketball is a 5-on-5 sport, they're lying, because I had to watch this man get jumped 5v1 versus one of the greatest teams in modern times. With Timofey Mozgov and J.R. Smith by his side, LeBron dragged this series to 6 games while averaging 36 points, 13 rebounds, and 9 assists in the series. And while watching Matthew Dellavedova nearly go into cardiac arrest trying to chase Stephen Curry around for 40 minutes, many fans asked the question, even if the Cavs lose this series, should LeBron still receive Finals MVP? He's clearly the best player on the floor. The answer was no, and it will always be no. Instead, the award went to the man who was guarding LeBron. To give some perspective on how
There's too much precedent, dog. There's just way too much precedent on what the Finals MVP is. This isn't like the MVP award where you can point to a couple of times where, you know, it went to a guy who was on a top 4 record in the league. It's not one of those, bro. Outside of the first Finals MVP, it has gone to a player on the winning team. And I'm sorry, maybe this is Mickey, bro, but if I'm Luka, I don't even want that award, first of all. I think Jerry West has said himself that, like, he doesn't want that, like, he hates that award because he lost and it's just a reminder of him losing. But Maybe this is a old school mindset, but the Finals MVP should go to the winner. You know what I'm saying? I don't care if the best player on the winning team is worse than the best player on the losing team. The Finals MVP should be awarded. It should be an award that celebrates the winner of the series. Who was the most valuable player for the winning team? You know what I'm saying? It's just weird to me. It's just weird to me, though.
LeBron nearly single-handedly willed the Cavs to a championship in 2015. Here is a breakdown of how much he was contributing to his team in that final series. By himself, LeBron accounted for 38% of the Cavaliers' points, 56% of their assists, 28% of their rebounds, 60% of the total points generated throughout the series, and was able to win 2 games. So far in the 2024 finals, Luka single-handedly makes up for 33% of the Mavericks' points, 40% of their assists, 24% of their rebounds, and 48% of the total points generated by the team. It doesn't matter how well a player plays in the finals. You have to win it to even be considered for the finals MVP. The award is for the best player on the winning team, not just the best player in the series. And if LeBron's performance in the 2015 finals didn't warrant a finals MVP despite the loss, I'm not sure if anything ever will. Now here's a take for all the Celtics fans out there. This fan says that a championship for Boston this season would make Jason Tatum better than Paul Pierce.
Interesting take. Interesting take. A championship for Boston this season makes Jason Tatum better than Paul Pierce. I think, from an individual standpoint, no ring bias aside, I already think they're on the same level. But in terms of greater all time, honestly, I would probably lean towards Jason Tatum. Because outside of the 2008 finals, you know, what Paul Pierce really hangs his hat on is the fact that, you know, he was drafted by the Celtics. He stayed there up until they traded him late in his career. He made it to 2 NBA Finals appearances where he split both. And he made it to an Eastern Conference Finals in the early 2000s. When I look at Jason Tatum, even as just his years as a first option, he's already made it to 2 finals. He has a chance to have the same finals record as Paul Pierce. And even in the championship, because there has been a lot of conversation on who the number 1 is. But I would say, I'll say this. I think Jason Tatum, and this is something that I feel like, especially with how he's been playing in these finals, I've just come to accept. And maybe this is y'all championship ring for this season when it comes to the Jason Tatum discourse. I've accepted the fact that Jason Tatum is probably not going to be in the conversations for best player in the world ever in his career. And I think when it comes to player comparisons, I do think Jason Tatum is probably going to be just a little bit better, a more respected version of Paul Pierce in this era. And what I mean by that is, this is a guy who will probably hover and peak at around top 6, top, 13, 14 players in the league. This is a guy that wins a lot. No, Paul Pierce didn't win a lot outside of those championship years, but this is a guy who wins, Jason Tatum. This is a guy who can be the number 1 option on a playoff team. And this is a guy who you can win a championship around. But the stats and the overall consistency of his game will just never be there to be in the conversations with a Luka, with a Jokic, with a Giannis. But he's also going to be the dude where on any given night, he can go band for band with any of them. And I've seen it. I've seen him go band for band with Giannis. I've seen him go band for band, in the regular season with Luka. I've seen him go band for band with a Joel Embiid. These guys that we typically think are better players than him because of consistency and because of statistics. But, same thing with Paul Pierce. I don't think Paul Pierce is better than LeBron, but I know he matched LeBron's 40 in a Game 7. You know what I'm saying? I know he's not better than Kobe, but there have been nights where he holds his own against Kobe good enough for the team to win, and that's all you can really ask for from JT. But you know, that's fine. I've accepted that about JT. If he proves me wrong, then we gonna have different conversations. But until he proves me wrong in that department, JT is the Paul Pierce of this era, and I don't think there's any shame in that. I don't. To me, there's no shame in being the Paul Pierce of an era. I understand Paul Pierce is a dude that gets clowned on, but Paul Pierce had a really successful Hall of Fame, first ballot Hall of Fame level career. If you can be a better version of Paul Pierce, that's nothing to scoff at. So.
Now, let me begin by saying Paul Pierce has become one of the most underrated stars of the past. His resume doesn't quite stack up to some of his peers of the 2000s, but Pierce was a really good player and a cornerstone to the Celtics franchise for 15 years. Some moments and opinions he's had over the last few years have kind of skewed the public's perception on him, but that doesn't change how awesome he was as a player. But with that being said, as an individual player, Jason Tatum is already better than Paul Pierce was. Tatum has a more well-rounded game. He's a much better playmaker, he's more versatile, and where Pierce really shined with his scoring and shooting ability, Tatum does even that at about the same rate and caliber. Keep in mind, Pierce did play in the slow...
I will say this, I would love to see Paul Pierce play in this era. I would love to see Paul Pierce play in this era. Because I feel like for his time, Paul Pierce actually had a relatively higher three-point volume than his peers, pun intended. I would love to see a 6'7", 6'8", small forward who could put the ball on the floor, stretch the floor out. Was a solid defender, a decent athlete, clutch, play in this era. That would be really fun.
Lowest era in NBA history, so his numbers don't quite do him justice. Adjusted for the pace of today's NBA, his numbers would look something like this. Really similar to what we've seen from Tatum throughout his career.
Yeah.
But overall, Tatum has already peaked higher than Pierce did. He is a far better defensive player than Pierce was, and he's more versatile on both ends of the floor. Tatum already has 10 times the MVP shares Pierce did in his 19-year career. Individually, Tatum has been good enough for long enough to say that he has a bigger impact on a game-to-game basis than Pierce did. At the moment, you can still make
You gotta get that ring, though. I can't lie. You gotta get that ring.
An argument for Pierce being the better player throughout his career, but if the Celtics win a ring this year, and especially if Jason Tatum wins a Finals MVP, then that argument no longer exists. But even without those accolades on his resume, I agree with this take. Jason Tatum is better than Paul Pierce was, and a ring this season would cement it. Now, this next take came live on air during the Western Conference Finals, and fans are interpreting it in a few different ways. In the midst of going up 3-0 on the Timberwolves, Stan Van Gundy said that Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving are arguably the best offensive backcourt in the history of the NBA.
They have two guys that are pretty electrifying as well.
Yeah, and Minnesota's top-rated defense is going to be challenged trying to slow them down. Arguably the best offensive backcourt in the history of the NBA in Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving.
Did you say history?
I mean, again, like I said earlier, they're up there. They are up there. If we're talking about just the skill set of both players, I think what other players have, obviously on Luka and Kyrie, is longevity, is results, is accolades. It's, proven work, essentially, right? When you look at Steph and Clay, we've seen what they've done on the biggest stage and what they have done to that franchise, for that franchise. When you look at Magic Johnson and Michael Cooper, for example, we've seen what they've done. But in terms of a skill set, I think they're up there. I think Luka offensively and just as a player has peaked at levels comparable to a Steph Curry, at levels comparable to a Magic Johnson, and if not now, it'll be at some point during the line. But I think we're gonna look back at this MVP season, MVP caliber season from Luka and say, "Yo, that motherfucker's a bad man." And you roll out that floor out there with Steph and Magic, he's going to hold his own, this version of Luka. And then Kyrie, right? I think Kyrie as their two compared to a Klay Thompson compared to a Michael Cooper holds himself pretty well. Pretty well, in my opinion. This is a duo that can put the ball on the floor, both of them. Kyrie can move off ball and be a really good spot-up shooter. 3-level scoring from both players. You know what I'm saying? Some of the best shot creation in NBA history. Now, defensively, I don't think they're up there. You know, especially when you're considering Steph and Clay, specifically Clay, not Steph. But I think from a skill set, from a talent perspective, yeah, Luka and Kyrie are up there.
Now, Luka and Kyrie have only played about 70 games together, and this is their first postseason playing together, and they haven't really accomplished much in the grand scheme of things, and about a million other reasons why this sounds crazy at first. But Stan wasn't implying anything about success or accomplishments, just simply as an offensive duo, Luka and Kyrie might be the best backcourt we've ever seen. And if we're just talking about offensive ability, then there really aren't many backcourts that stack up against this one. That short list may include 2018 Harden and Chris Paul,
2018 Harden and Chris Paul. I can't scoff at the defense of this duo, which is crazy, knowing James Harden, but again, more so Chris Paul. I would say Luka is better than Harden. Oh, 2018 Harden was kind of crazy. I'll give the edge to Luka over Harden, though. And then 2018 Chris Paul versus this version of Kyrie, I would actually probably give the edge towards Kyrie. But I don't know. This duo's up there, too.
2021 Harden and Kyrie.
Yo, 2021, that team, man. I think that's one of the craziest what-ifs in history, man. I think when we look at teams that never won a championship, some of the greatest teams to never win a championship. 2017 Cavs, 2021 Nets, and maybe like, I don't know, the 09 Lakers, 09 Celtics or some shit, bro. The 21 Nets, ooh, that team was a problem.
If we consider Luka to be a guard, then surely LeBron and Kyrie in 2017 would be considered a backcourt duo as well. Manu Ginobili and Tony Parker were pretty damn good. This fan might be onto something with his choice of the best backcourt of all time. And of course, the two elephants in the room, Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. For the sake of this argument, if we ignore the accomplishments and the time these duos played together and just approach this from the aspect of offensive ability and production, then Luka and Kyrie are actually in the conversation for the best offensive backcourt in NBA history. Taking the best versions of each of these backcourts throughout the years and looking at some of their numbers like points per game, total points generated per game, this statistic factors in assists to their total offensive output, shooting efficiency, and their offensive impact through offensive estimated plus minus, then it's pretty tough to choose just one backcourt out of these five. Luka and Kyrie are the most productive, and they're just about as impactful offensively as these other backcourts. But once you factor in the shot making, scoring versatility, gravity, and all the little things that make a player special offensively that the numbers might not account for, then you could definitely make an argument that Luka and Kyrie are the most offensively talented backcourt in NBA history. Now, as to how good they are, well then if we can't use accolades and accomplishments, and this is just an eye test kind of thing, then that
eye test? If it's eye test, bro, I'm telling you, Harden and Kyrie, ooh, crazy.
It's pretty subjective. Steph and Klay were good enough to win 4 titles together, but I guess you could say that as a backcourt, they weren't as good at basketball as the combination of Luka and Kyrie. Harden and Kyrie were really good at basketball, but they didn't really play together all that often. And it feels a bit wrong to not at least consider that within this discussion. Once you start to factor in what these backcourts actually did together, this entire discussion changes very quickly.
Oh, yeah. If we're talking about, again, greatest backcourts of all time, you know, when we factor in resumes, I'm sorry, Luke and Kyrie are not in that discussion. But if we're talking about peak for peak, bar for bar, band for band type shit, they're up there, man. I can't lie. The only thing really holding me back from that is, I'm not going to lie, how this duo is playing in the finals. I think Kyrie has had too many stinkers in these finals. And Luka, while I think Luka has been the most consistent superstar/star in this series so far, I still think like Luka hasn't been playing perfect offensively. Like, I think it's been 2 games. Luka has not hit a 3 in 2 games. And I want to see what he's shooting so far in the series going into game 5. Because it's not pretty. It's not pretty for Luka. Now, you might attribute that to the Boston Celtics defense, but I swear to God, like, Luka is just missing shots that he typically makes, being Luka Doncic. Luka shooting 25% from 3 in the series on 36 attempts. I think he's leading. Is he leading both teams? Yes, he's leading both teams in 3-point attempts. And over the course of 5 games, that's roughly 7 threes a game, and you're shooting 25%. Like, Luka, what are we doing? And then from the free throw line, it's actually shot up. This was, I think the first few games, this was at like 46%. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, nah. And then Kyrie's numbers so far in the series just have not been that impressive. So,
in terms of exactly what Stan Van Gundy was referring to, offensive excellence, then Luka and Kyrie are, in fact, arguably one of the best backcourts the game has ever seen.
Not a bad
Our
take,
next take is one of the more unhinged takes I've seen recently. Let's not sugarcoat it. Jason Tatum has underperformed a bit over the last couple weeks. And coming off the heels of a Jaylen Brown Conference Finals MVP, followed up by a lackluster start in the finals, Tatum's superstar label has been put into question. The peak of Jason Tatum propaganda? This right here. Fans claiming that Jason Tatum is an elite role player. The LeBron
an elite role player, my ass, man.
James of Tobias Harris's, if you will. And this take is missing so much context that I almost want to start rooting for the Celtics purely out of spite. Since the start of the conference finals, which is when this discourse really started to gain traction, Tatum has been averaging.
I will say it didn't start during the conference finals. It's been going on. It's been a build-up. It's been a build-up. I think we saw, honestly, it started in 2021. It started in 2021, 2022, when the Celtics looked like they were about to miss the finals. Not the finals, the playoffs before that season turnaround. And then it got brought up again in the 22 finals, where it looked like Jaylen Brown was the more consistent guy out of the two. And then it's getting brought up this season, this playoff run, because of the fact that JT, listen, I'm a JT fan. I still think he's a superstar. I still think he's one of the top 12, top 15 players in the league. But it is annoying to me that we are now in the NBA Finals on the cusp of a championship, and JT still hasn't put together just a strong performance from start to finish. You know what I'm saying? Dominate the first half, dominate the second half, and we don't got no questions about the game that you had. You know, you were efficient from the field. You didn't have crazy turnovers. There wasn't a crazy choke job. Just, hey, can I just get 36, 12, 5 on 55% shooting, 4 of 10 from 3, 86% from the line, and just a win. Maybe even get some clutch buckets. Like, that just hasn't happened so far. And it is annoying as fuck. It is annoying as fuck.
Averaging 26 points, 7 assists, and 10 rebounds a game on 52% true shooting while winning all 6 games. Those are all NBA numbers in the playoffs, and people are calling him a role player. In fact, there have only been 7 players in the history of the NBA to make it past the first round while averaging these numbers in a playoff run. Oscar Robertson, Larry Bird, LeBron, Giannis, Jokic, Luka, and Jason Tatum. A really, really good group of elite role players. Now, I will be the first to say that Tatum has drifted into unwarranted territory over the last year or two, with some fans trying to jam him into the top 5 players in the NBA discussion when he isn't. But even when Tatum has a subpar stretch of games, or doesn't fit the typical mold of high-volume, ultra-bucket-getting superstar that we like to see, he is still one of the best players on the planet. Calling him
Yeah, I think we also need to shift how we view Jason Tatum. And I do like that about the conversation in these playoffs so far, because, you know, his claim to fame has been buckets. His claim to fame has been scoring. And even this season, he still averaged 28 a game. You know what I'm saying? Typically, you think of a 28-point per game scorer as an elite scorer. But nah, 2024 Jason Tatum is not 2022 Jason Tatum. He's also not 2023 Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum's playmaking in this year is not Chris Paul, it's not Luka level, but it's been good. It's been something to actually compliment him over. Jason Tatum's defense has been something to compliment him over. You know what I'm saying? And I also think it's kind of unfair to him because while he is taking the most shots on this team, So to act like he doesn't have any opportunity is a fucking lie. It is different from other teams who revolve their offense around their nucleus, their star player. This is not a heliocentric offense. You know what I'm saying? This is not the Dallas Mavericks. Hell, this isn't even the Minnesota Timberwolves, where their offense is so lackluster that you just got to force Ant to take 25, 27 shots here and there. Like, this isn't that type of offense. This isn't the Cleveland Cavaliers. This isn't even the Indiana Pacers. Like, this is a team with so much shot creation that allowing Jason Tatum to get 25 to 28 shots off a night would be bad offense. It would be a bad utilization of all the shot creators that they have when you ice out all the other shot creators that they got, not allow them to have rhythm, all for the sake of Jason Tatum to get his 30. Like, that would be selfish basketball. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like that doesn't get factored in enough. The fact that Jason Tatum's a rhythm scorer. A lot of these elite volume scorers are rhythm scorers. And unfortunately, the offense, right as it is right now, it isn't 2022 anymore. It isn't 2021 anymore. It isn't, those 2 years specifically. The offense is completely different under Joe Mazzulla. And one thing this team has definitely prided themselves on is buying into the Joe Mazzulla system. Period, point blank. So, I don't know, bro. It is what it is. I can only defend, these inefficient shooting nights as much as I can. He does need to play better. And all the criticism he's warranted so far. Not all of it, but in terms of these I think the top 5 conversation has been shut down. I think he did have a chance in this playoffs to really push that bar, you know what I'm saying, as far as he could. But he just hasn't, you know what I'm saying. I think going into these playoffs, the top 4 was still locked for me. Giannis, Luka, Jokic, and Embiid. From a talent perspective, I would still rather have Tatum instead of Embiid for injury purposes. But that 5 slot with SGA, with Anthony Davis, with JT, with KD, with Donovan Mitchell, with I'm probably missing some names. A healthy Kawhi. I think Jason Tatum did have a chance. I think Jason Tatum did have a chance to separate himself from that crowd, and he just hasn't. You know what I'm saying? It has nothing to do with with the competition and the injuries he's faced as well. It's just, you haven't been good enough. If we're going into these finals and he was averaging, 30, 10, and 5, which honestly, if he just hit his shots, he had a chance of doing. You know what I'm saying? And this is not him playing out of the system, just, not shooting. What is he shooting from the playoffs so far? Again, this has nothing to do with shot selection and ball hogging. This is just making shots you're supposed to make as JT, right? In these playoffs, JT shooting 29% from 3. This has a chance to go up to 27, 28, right? With higher efficiency, this probably could have been 48, 36, 85. 10 rebounds is still there. 6 assists is still there. I think we're having completely different conversations. But it's fine. As long as they're winning. I truly don't care. I am a Celtics fan first over everything, but just if we're going to have the discussion about Jason Tatum, yes, I will concede. This finals run, this playoff run has not done him justice whatsoever.
An elite role player is hyperbole. I get that. But the less brain rot version of this argument is that Jason Tatum isn't a star in this league. And this is 100% objectively wrong. There is no metric or game or series or play that you could use to make this argument. At times, I too am not a big fan of the Celtics. This, however, does not send me into psychosis claiming one of the best players in the world is a role player. This take is abysmal. But let me know what y'all think. Leave your thoughts in the comments.
I mean, the superstar conversation is always a very semantic-y conversation too. Like, what is a superstar to you, right? Because I've talked to some people where a superstar is, you got to be the best player on the best team, best player on a championship-winning team to be a superstar, which honestly he's on pace to do, arguably, right? Sometimes a superstar is, you're gonna be a top 5 player specifically, or a tier 1 player specifically, which Jason Tatum is not. You know, I've talked to some people, shout out to Dama, where that definition of a superstar is very wide. You know what I'm saying? Like you can consider a guy like De'Aaron Fox a superstar in that capacity. You would consider a guy like Jalen Brunson a superstar in that capacity. So, you know, the superstar conversation is always very semantic-y. But shout out to Jimmy for the video though. Link to his video will be in the description down below. Listen, if you made it this far, we are going to be streaming on Twitch tonight. We are watching NBA Finals Game 5. We're also doing the pod beforehand. We're starting a little bit early. But yeah, we will be there. Twitch.tv/BSOLZ. Please lock the fuck in, y'all. I am unbanned, so we're good to go. Shout out to the Jason Tatum blankie. And I'm out, man. Peace. Season 5, man. Fuck.